What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Beautiful people. Welcome to the Raw Unscripted Show. It is Tuesday night. We're live 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to catch us on the video podcast, you guys can check us out every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm live in front of you. My guest is live in front of you. We were just talking about it backstage that a lot more podcasts are becoming video podcasts. And I'm happy to say that since its inception 5 years ago, oh my God, we've been doing video podcasts. So you can always check it out at youtube.com/Christopher Rausch. Rausch. If you don't even want to go there, you can go to noexcusescoach.com, and all my social media is right there. You can check out the podcast. We've been doing this for 5 years. There have been some incredible episodes. There's been some good episodes, but everything is designed to move you forward. This podcast is all about inspiration, motivation, basically getting you to reshape your beliefs and your opinions about your past, present, and future, and to arm you with tools that are able to get you unstuck and get you to be Kickass Unstoppable, which is my brand. So thank you guys for being here, whether you're live or on the replay. And I have a hair in my eyelash that is driving me crazy. So pardon me for a second. My hair and makeup person didn't catch that. So anyways, we're excited to have you guys here and we appreciate you. So whether you're live or on the replay, feel free to ask us questions. We'll always capture the questions and we'll get you the answers to what it is that you need, because my intention every single week is to show up and deliver this almost like a group coaching class. But every single week, as you build upon the tips and advice that we give, that my guest gives, you go and implement those in your life. And guess what? Exponentially, you fail your way to success. Exponentially, you take that imperfect action. And in 6 months to a year, just imagine where your life could be different. So I invite you to take notes and then take action. I'm a big fan of sticky notes. As you guys may have heard me say before, I keep a pad of sticky notes right next to me. And then when I have something that I need to work on or something that I want to implement, I write it down and I stick it on my monitor. So it's in front of mine. So it's like, hey, Chris, have you done your journaling today? Hey, Chris, have you done your breath work today? Hey, Chris, have you done your meditation? Whatever it might be. Hey, Chris, have you watched your negative self-talk? Whatever it might be, write it down and stick it in front of you, wherever it might be your dashboard, it might be your mirror, it might be your monitor. I like to use monitors, and that way, as you feel more comfortable with something, as it's become more routine in your life, you take that sticky note off and you put it in a stack. And then at the end of the year, you go back and you look at all the things you accomplished, and you look back and you have a little mini book and you're like, wow. Because so oftentimes, guess what we focus on? We focus on what we didn't accomplish. We focus on the negatives. We focus on the what ifs. My encouragement to you is to focus and celebrate the successes, because so oftentimes we don't do that. And I have been focusing on that a lot more recently. I'll give you an example. I tend to get very upset in the car. Let's just talk, not road rage, but I tend to have expectations that people are going to use their turn signals. I have expectations that people are not going to wait till the last minute to get in the lane, but sometimes those expectations aren't met and I get frustrated. And so the other day I sat there and I said, rather than noting all the people who are not using their turn signal, let me count the people who are using their turn signal, because that happens to be a pet peeve of mine. You know, it's just a little lever on the side of your steering wheel, in case you don't know what it is or what it does. When you click it, it actually tells the person behind you or in front of you what it is that you're going to do. And if you want to get in the lane, rather than just shoving yourself in the lane and just kind of potentially causing an accident, just flip that thing on and let people know where you're going, and we can make space for you. And so I did this for the last, 4 or 5 days. And I've noticed that there are a lot of people that use their turn signals. And guess what? When somebody doesn't use their turn signal, I'm realizing that maybe they're in a rush. Maybe their light bulbs burn out. Maybe they just don't give a shit, whatever it might be. But I'm noticing the things that people are doing right. And guess what? My anger level, my frustration level has been reduced a lot more. And I'm also recognizing that people are stressed out. They're in a hurry. And so what I do is I say to myself, I hope that person's not in a hurry because somebody's in the hospital. I hope that they're not about to shit their pants, whatever it might be. I make it funny. So as we focus on things, this is the cornerstone of the message. As we focus on things and we focus on the things that are going right, more of those opportunities show up for us, and we're able to celebrate those successes. So again, write down on sticky notes, keep a list of it. Here's an extra tip I'll give to you for absolutely free. Get yourself a clear jar. And then when something happens that's great in your life, somebody says a compliment, something happens positive at work, something, whatever it might be, write it on a sticky note and put it inside of a jar. And then when you're having that bad day, open that jar up like a jar of cookies and enjoy all the positive feedback. And remember, again, celebrate your successes, because that's what this is all about. And speaking of successes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hot off the presses of being able to announce this. You guys have heard me talk about it, and it's taken a while, but my book, It's Just You and Me, Kid, the story of my life of being a 7th grade homeless dropout who lived in the backseat of a station wagon with 18 cats and 4 dogs. The guy that went through 2 suicide attempts and fortunately sucked at it. All the different things that have happened in my life to help me be the person that I am today in front of you talking right now. I just wrote and signed a contract today for my editor. So yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, I know it was promised last year, but it is indeed going to be done before the fall. And so I encourage you and I invite you to go to itsjustyoumandmekid.com. When you go there, if you sign up, just all you got to do is put your name and your email. I'm not going to spam you or anything else. If you're interested in getting the book, and I know many of you are, you get a bunch of bonuses. We're going to have a private Zoom call. We're going to talk about aspects of the book, and I'm going to share stories with you that didn't make it into the book. You can ask questions. There's a lot more things. If you go there and check it out, there's a whole list of things that you're going to get. A private coaching session with me to help me make it a bestseller and help me impact millions and millions of lives. I know this with all my heart that this book will be made into a movie, and I would love for you to be on that journey with me to help me make that happen. And I know a lot of you guys are excited about that. So just make sure you go to itsjustyoumandmekid.com, put your name and your email on there, and you guys are going to be the first people to get a copy of it. Maybe I'm going to be sharing some stories privately on the email list with people who are signed up for that. So I encourage you to do that as well. The other thing I want to mention, and because a lot of people don't know about this, but I do have a group accountability coaching program. It is supremely affordable. I mean, we're talking stupid affordable. Accountability is one of the key cornerstones of what it is that takes for us to be successful. I have a coach, I have mentors, I have advisors, and I know without those people in my life, without investing in masterminds and coaches, I would not be sitting in front of you today. I would still be in my corporate job, slaving away, working 18 hours a day for somebody else to have their dreams realized. But because I had a coach, and because that coach said to me, Chris, when are you going to get out of survivor mode? That was worth the thousands and thousands of dollars I spent on myself in order to have that experience. And when you have accountability in your life, it's pretty crazy what it is that you can accomplish. Like I said before, just imagine getting three things done every single week that move you closer to your specific goal: writing a book, starting a business, leaving a job, whatever it might be, becoming better at your marriage. When you focus on those things and you're held accountable to it, you will achieve those things, and you will start building that confidence, and you'll start building that positive reinforcement of continuing and being excited about that, excited about taking better care of yourself. This accountability group is for you. You get a private Facebook group. We get 2 monthly Zoom calls with me where I actually teach with you. You get an accountability partner. You get so much more. So I've got it up there on the screen right now. noexcusescoach.com/group-accountability-coaching. If you guys are listening to that, but if you just can't remember that, just go to noexcusescoach.com, go to the coaching tab. You can check it out. I've got 3 months right now at a supremely insane price. We're talking $30 a month for the first 3 months. That is ridiculous. I know that I'm giving it away, but I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, because to work with me one-on-one is more expensive, a lot more expensive. And I want to give you guys all tools and resources. So feel free to join that today. It's an amazing group. We just had our session last night, and it was a breakthrough session. We talked about overcoming obstacles. And so I gave tons and tons of tips and advice and answered questions and got people moving in the right direction. We got somebody who's going to be starting their own business. We got another person who is completing her memoir. We got another person who is doing a podcast business and getting more followers and paid subscriptions to it. We got so many different people in there. It's an amazing family, an amazing community. So I'm doing you justice by sharing that with you right now. It's up to you whether or not you want to invest in yourself. So think about it this way. You spend $1,000 on a phone, you do all this other things, you spend a lot of money on coffee, spend some money on yourself. Spend some money on yourself. Allow me into your life and let you become kick-ass unstoppable. And that will do my heart good, and that'll do your legacy good too. So if you have any questions on that, if you never had a coaching session with me, I'll even do this right now. I'm just being told to do this right for my little angel. I'll give you a complimentary coaching session with me. That's $300. I charge $300 an hour for my coaching. I will give that to you if you're interested in joining the group accountability coaching. We'll talk about where you're at. We'll talk about where you want to go. And I assure you, you will end the call feeling inspired and feeling like you have the right person in your corner. Just to share this with you, I had one of those coaching calls last week, and the lady has been through so much stuff in her life, and she wasn't trusting people. And by the end of that, I spent an hour with her. By the end of that hour, she signed up for the group accountability coaching program. And today she told me in a message, she goes, Chris, I think you're the person that I'm going to be able to trust that's going to move me forward out of an hour. So do that for yourself. Don't regret not investing in yourself, because so many people do, and they think they're going to someday do whatever it is. And I see so many people dying with regrets. So do not do that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this particular conversation. I'm excited that my guest is on tonight. We had a pre-interview call months and months and months ago, because this show is booked out. It's now booked out until November, which is crazy. But we had an awesome conversation. I'm excited for the conversation tonight, because we're going to be talking about what we can do to get out of our own way, what we can do to find presence in our life, what we can do to say yes to the moments. So please help me in welcoming Sam Liebowitz to the Raw Unscripted Show. Mr. Sam Liebowitz, thank you for being here, my brother. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Christopher. And listen, congratulations on the book. That's a wonderful thing. You know, having been an author myself, I know what a feat it is to get a book out there. So congratulations.
It's been a joy. It's been no, I'm just kidding. It hasn't been a joy. It's been one of the major situations of my life that has brought meaning and purpose into my existence, because normally I focus on 10 things at once. And so I started writing it in 2022, I think it was. And yeah, it's been a labor of love. I wound up with almost nearly 200,000 words, and I've had to cull it down to 125,000 words. And actually, I'm going to cull it down a little bit more. But thank you, man. I appreciate that, because I know that you wrote a book. Where is it? Don't tell me. I have it in the bio. Where did I put it? Well, tell us about your book. Let's just have you tell us about your book. So you wrote a book. You're a best-selling author. Talk to us about that.
Sure. So my book is called Everyday Awakening.
That's what it is. It's right there. Duh.
Yeah. And I came out with it in November of 2020. And I had actually been working on a different book it's a year and a half before, but the person who I was working with and the ghostwriter I was working with, the editor, I should say, got in an accident, was in the hospital for months, and just everything fell apart. And so when 2020 came around, I just felt like I had to get something out, but I didn't feel I had the time to write a book. But I have all these blog posts I've been writing for the last 6-7 years. So
wow.
I got a professional editor, and I had over 350 blog posts at the time. We whittled it down to 126, tightened it up, and divided it into 7 chapters. And every little section is a short, page and a half, 2-page read. And it's almost, people have told me it's kind of like having an Oracle deck in book format. You can just flip open to any page, read it, and there's a message for you for what you're going through at the moment, or something to think about. And it's just filled with a lot of little pearls of wisdom based on my life that I've been going through over the last years.
Wow. What would you say are the top 3 pearls of wisdom as you were writing the book and as you were distilling it down into the form that it is in now? Let me say that slower. Why can't I say that? It is in now. You ever have those challenging phrases? What do you think are the top 3 things that you noticed that rose to the top for you when you look back on your life and realize where you are today? What are some of those nuggets that really hit you?
I would say the first thing is that what I've really come to understand and learn is that our heart, which is an often ignored part of our consciousness, is so much more important than we give it credit for.
Yes.
And most people, especially in this country, are cut off from our hearts and our bodies. We're it's not safe. We've been through trauma. People have hurt us. There's pain, there's loss, there's all kinds of stuff. So we retreat up into our minds, because the mind is a safe place. We can figure things out. We can calculate. We keep ourselves up in our mind. But our mind is only 1/4 of our whole consciousness.
True.
There's our heart, there's our body, there's our spirit. And when we and in the West, we've so glorified the mind that intellect is above everything else. Yet there's this innate wisdom in our body and in our hearts that's so deep that really can help us to have a much more empowered and much more beautiful life if we just do the work to feel safe again, to be in our heart.
I love that. What are some of the first steps that people do? Because I completely agree with you. So many people are cerebral and they're ignoring that aspect of their life. I, for one, was one of those people. I was very much into my ego. I was very much into my validation. I was very much into, if I do X, Y, and Z, I know I'll get this result, AKA certainty. What are some ways that we can get connected to our heart side of our things and be able to trust, even if though we've gone through maybe some trauma in our life?
The first thing is we got to give ourselves space.
Yeah.
We're so distracted, and our lives are so filled up with so much stuff, and our phones going off all the time. We don't give ourselves space. So, the first thing I would say is schedule time to turn off your phone, turn off your computer. And if you live near nature, great, go into nature. If you live in a city like I do, I go to Central Park with my wife. Like, just disconnect. And if you're not near nature, then just sit and breathe and just be with yourself. And it's so funny, like when we actually give time and space to ourselves, like the feelings and the emotions will just naturally come up.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, that's one of the reasons why we keep ourselves so busy and so distracted, so we don't have to feel what's there. And so for those people who are like constantly running and constantly doing this or doing that, I say, give yourself more time. You know, life is not about being so productive. It's about living a good life. And to live a good life, we've got to be present to what's right here.
So true. That's probably one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn, honestly, Sam. When my son was born 7 years ago, it really caused me to get present in the moment. I was always either pontificating about yesterday or thinking or planning or strategizing about tomorrow, that I was never really present. And one of the things that I did as in preparation to become a father is I started asking my friends, like, you know, what advice would you give to a new dad? And a lot of them said, be present with them because the time goes by so fast. And then I realized that the egoic stuff and the validation and other accomplishments are all nice. But when you do get present and you appreciate the moment, the rest of that stuff starts to come anyway. And it comes congruently, it comes authentically, and you're able to enjoy it more without having to sit there and say, well, you know, I got it because I busted my ass and I worked 18 hours a day and I did all these different things. No, I was present with myself and I allowed myself that space. Like you said so perfectly, we allow ourselves that space to be us, because so many times we're in that state of validation, that state of getting things accomplished, that we're trying to ignore all the other things that are going on in our life, which one day will creep up us and bite us in the ass. I want to go back for a second. When you think about tonight's conversation, and I titled the show "Unlock Your Power, Say Yes to Life on Your Terms." What do you want to get specifically across to most people tonight that are watching and listening to this? What's your central message of people based on your life and based on what you've accomplished that you would like people to walk away from this conversation tonight knowing?
Well, you know, say yes to life. When we had our conversation and we kind of talked about that, it's been one of my superpowers through my life. And sometimes it hasn't served me so well, is just saying yes to what life puts in front of us. And I think about what I'm doing today and the life I have today. And when I think back like 15, 20, 30 years ago, I never in a million years could imagine what I'm doing today back then.
Me neither.
So how could I end up here? I just said yes to what life put in front of me. You know, I never thought about starting an internet radio station. I didn't even know there were internet radio stations. How did I end up with this? I met a guy at a party who was an acupuncturist who had decided to become a Buddhist monk, and he was selling off all his worldly possessions.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's different. I'm like, well, have you sold your business yet? And he goes, no, not yet, but I'm talking to people. And I'm like, well, I network a lot. I know a lot of people. Maybe I could help you sell your business. And he was like, oh, that'd be great. It would be really good karma for you, helping a monk go into the monkhood. And then we're talking a little bit more, and he's like, oh, yeah, and I started this internet radio station last year. And I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. Acupuncturist radio station? And I'm like, what's your name again? And he says, Giorgio. And I'm like, I know who you are. My friend Larry does a radio show on your network, and he's told me about you, but he never connected us. And now there he is standing in front of me in living color. So a week later, we have this long meeting to tell me all about your business. I'm still thinking, I'll just try and help him to sell it. And he tells me all about his acupuncture practice, which was nice. I mean, I'm not an acupuncturist. It didn't overly interest me. But when you start talking about the radio station, that really caught my attention, because I have a background in public speaking and a background in technology. So it was a nice marriage of the two. But still, I'm going through, and I kind of just jokingly said to him by the end of the meeting, hey, this is such a good deal. If I can't help you find someone to buy it, I'll buy it myself. We both kind of laugh about it because, what am I going to do with acupuncture practice? So I go home that night. I tell my wife all about the meeting, and she asks me some questions. She looks at me, and she's a stone cold face, and she's like, forget helping him to sell the business. I'm like, really? And I was kind of crestfallen. He was a nice guy. I could get some good karma. And she's like, yeah, we may not have much money after the financial crisis, but we may as well put what little bit of money we have into a business that's actually making money. Let's just buy it ourselves. I'm like,
Wow.
what a great idea. Yeah, let's do that. And so that's what we did. And again, it wasn't planned. I had no idea. I mean, most of my life, the things I ended up stepping into, I stepped into because of circumstance and situation and just who happened to be in my life at the moment. And that's just the way I live my life. I never had a 5-year plan. I never was like, oh, I have to be married and have 2.5 children and a house and a white picket fence by the time I'm 35 years old. No, I'm like, life is life.
Yes.
It comes to us in amazing ways. Just if we're too distracted, we miss some of the most beautiful moments.
Dude, that is so true. That is so true. I want to share something with you because this is perfect timing. Two of the books that I recommend to people the most. Well, one of them is The 5 Regrets of the Dying, because I'm all about regrets, and that book changed my life. But there's two books that somebody gave me when I was talking about trying to find inner peace and freedom and get out of my mind and into my heart, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show. One of them is called The Surrender Experiment, and the other one's The Untethered Soul.
Singer's book, yeah.
Michael Singer, you know him. Okay. So this is great. That changed my perspective about so much in reading both of those books, because he talks about that very thing. Like, just relax, and whatever shows up in your life is meant to show up in your life, and say yes to it. As you know, for the people who don't know, he talks about, he was a macroeconomics major, and he didn't really want to do it. Then all of a sudden he found meditation. Then he found that he could get lost in it for hours. And then the whole sequence of events, he built some cabins, and then people moved onto his property. And then he started this business, and then he had to create a software for it, and became a software manufacturer, and became a CEO, and had to go with the search, did all these things to be able to write these books. So it all happened on purpose. And I tell people that all the time. Everything that's happened in your life and everything that's happening in your life is preparing you for what's next. And that alone has helped me release the need for control. My coach would tell me all the time, when are you going to get out of survivor mode? I'm like, I'm not in survivor mode. I have 2 houses. I have this, blah, blah, blah. She goes, no, Chris, you always have to have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G based on my experiences as a kid. But those books instrumentally changed my perspective about things. And my wife will laugh at me. I'll sit there and she'll be like, oh, what are you up to? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and that. She's like, where did that come from? I don't know. It just showed up, and I decided to say yes to it. And that has taken me on so many. It's only been about 3 or 4 years since I've read those books, but I constantly, it's one of those books that I can pick up, almost like the Bible. You can pick it up and like, okay, I'm going to read today. And those messages always speak to me. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. What do you say to people who live their life in fear? They're always afraid. Well, Chris, what if I fail? Or what if it doesn't work out? Or what if this happens? And what if this happens? And they stay in that, what I call comfortably miserable spot of their life, thinking that someday I'm going to start that business. Someday I'm going to leave my job. Someday I'm going to become an artist. Someday I'm going to do those things. What do you say to those people who live in that state of fear and they never actually take that action?
Well, the first thing is to recognize that you have the fear, because the thing that holds them back is they don't even realize that the fear is there. But I would have compassion for that fear. That fear is there for a reason. That fear developed over time to help us to survive. So I don't believe in just dismissing outright the fear, because it lives inside of us. We can't just dismiss it out. But if we hold that fear, if we give some space to it, if we sit with it and we ask the fear, what do you want? And listen to it. Sometimes that's all the fear wants, is just to be heard. And the problem is we're just not listening to it. We're not, and by listening to it, I don't mean doing what it tells us to do, by truly just listening to it in our bodies. What are we afraid of? Why are we afraid of it? What does our fear want for us?
Like going deeper, like is what you're saying, is like going deeper into finding out what the real why of it is.
Right. But it can sometimes just take just being present to it. And then as we hold it and we create more space for it, it kind of dissipates. And it's funny, it was once explained to me years ago, it's kind of like taking a cup of water. And if you have it, and it could be like a full cup, right? So the cup is full. But if you pour it in a gallon jug, suddenly it's just a little bit of water on the bottom. And if you pour that gallon jug into like a fish tank, now it's even less. And so the larger and larger the container is, the smaller and smaller whatever is inside becomes. So the larger container we have for the fear, the less and less forceful it is, the less and less impactful it is. But again, it goes back to what we were talking about before, presence. You got to be present to it. You have to be willing to feel it. There's an old expression, you got to feel it to heal it. So if you don't go there, it's always going to be controlling you, driving you. But at least if you stop and be present to it and be at least conscious to it, you can still have the fear, but it's not controlling you anymore.
I love that. Do you have an example in your life where you were perhaps afraid of something? And can you walk us through that experience of how you shifted your mindset and shifted your perspective on that?
You know, lots of times it just takes getting to that point of like, I can't take this anymore.
Yeah.
Like I had a mentor I was working with for many years, and I was working with him, and we always had a bit of I don't know, tension between us. And I didn't even realize until after I stopped working with him that there was a feeling of always being unsafe around him.
Wow. Emotionally or physically?
Emotionally.
Okay.
But you know, he had an aggressive side to him. So it's not like you knew he would never hit you, but you kind of was like almost afraid of him like yelling at you. But anyway, we worked together for a while, and then finally I graduated. I started facilitating under him, and I was busy and running around. And he's saying, "Oh, I'm not seeing you. You have to come in." I'm like, "Look, I'm going away for 3 months to the West Coast because my wife and I were both working virtually at the time. I don't have time to come. You don't have anything between now and when I leave." And he's like, "Well, if you don't come, I'm revoking your access." And I was like, "No, that's it. I'm done with enough of his bullshit." I went immediately to the woman in charge, and I was like, "I can't work with this guy anymore." And she's like, "What do you want me to do?" And I'm like, "You know, there's this guy who I've known for 10 years or 8 years at the time. We know each other really well. I want to work with him instead. It just makes sense." And, you know, a little back and forth, but eventually she did. But you know, my wife and I had many conversations about me working with this guy, and we talked about his bullying type attitude, but I didn't have another choice at the time. And it wasn't until the pandemic and things went virtual, and then you could work with different people. You know, it was a lot of things in the situation, but I would just, there was fear that kept me there, but I also felt like I didn't have another choice, which probably wasn't really true, but he was the only mentor in the New York City area at the time. Wow. So I mean, I could have left and worked with someone else, but they would be in a different part of the country. It would require a lot of travel, and it just didn't make sense. But like once it got to that point where it's like, he's like, "If you don't do this, I'm going to do this." And I'm like, fuck that. That's not the way a mentor treats somebody. I've worked with other mentors. I'm out of here. No way. And it's just, I think when sometimes it takes one of our standards being violated, or it just takes like that, you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then we're like, no, I'm not taking this bullshit anymore.
Good for you. I love that. I mean, it's so true, because we have to stand in our power. We don't realize how much power we actually do have. And I find that when that's why I talk about people being comfortably miserable. I'm like, you know, so many people are carrying around these fears and this trauma and this anger and this hurt, and they're carrying it around. Some people are wearing it like a badge of honor. "Oh, Chris, I can't do that because I was beaten. Oh, Chris, I can't do that because I was abandoned."
Yes. But
and I just ask people, like, what would you feel like if you just let go of that? What would it feel like if you let that go?
The thing is, we got to be compassionate.
Yes.
Because we don't know another person's process. And this has been a big lesson for me over the years, because my process is different than my wife's process, different than other people's process. And I see, like, sometimes it's much more difficult for certain people to get to a point than it is for other people.
Yeah.
And it can become very easy to become judgmental and say, like, you know, why isn't this person doing their work? Why are they taking so long to get through to it? No, you don't know what it's like to live inside their skin. And so that's where we really have to have compassion for people, because we don't know what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes. And you know what? They're going to get it when they get it. And it's all perfect. And you don't have to force it. It'll come at the right time. Now, it doesn't mean they might not need some support. Doesn't mean that maybe they are avoiding things and it takes them a little longer than it could. But, I'm a big believer that things happen exactly the way they should. Life is unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. We just have this perspective that's like not even a drop in the ocean over the vast sea of time. And when you think of like what happens in humanity over 1,000 years, like what the hell difference is an extra day or week?
Mm-hmm. It's a nanosecond when you look at it. My wife and I like to watch history, stuff like that. And we went to Italy, and it was surprising to me, growing up here in the United States, I thought 1942 was a billion years ago, realizing it really wasn't that long ago when you look at things being around in the 16th century, the 17th century, and all these different things that happened. But I love that point that you just brought up, and I want to reinforce that with everybody who's listening to this tonight. There's my buddy Tony's here commenting, and I'm going to grab some of these comments here in a second. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life that has helped me tremendously is seek first to understand, then to be understood, by Dr. Stephen Covey. Talks about in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I grew up with a woman who had to be always right. She always had to be in control, all these different things. For me, I sat there and I thought about it in terms of like, how can I become better at relationships? How can I not get fired from every job like she was? And throughout my life with her, I went through a lot of trauma and a lot of very, very challenging situations with her. And when I was writing this book about our journey together and all the different things that I lived through and I grew through, it kept coming back to me. I held anger and resentment for her because we lost the house that we were living in when I was 13 years old. We were homeless. We lived in a car with 18 cats and 4 dogs. That is not a joke. My mother was the crazy cat lady, not making it up. And so I always held this anger and this animosity towards her because she would say, I did the best I could. And my mother was brilliant, book smart. I mean, literally, she could have been a doctor. She would talk to doctors when I would see her, talking about her mother. And people would say, oh, where did you study? Where did you practice medicine? Where did you study medicine? She's like, oh, Johns Hopkins. And she never went to medical school, but she read the book. So she was book smart, but she was stupid as the day is long with people. And so as I was writing the book, I thought, how can I understand my mother better? How can I, and you said the words, walk a mile in their shoes. So people, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this tonight, take this to heart, because when I sat there and I thought about it, I'm like, if I had gone through all the experiences that my mother went through when she was born in 1942, the economic times, the political times, she grew up with parents who were in their early 20s. Her mother was very, very, very physically and emotionally abusive to her. Might I have been like her? And that has helped me so much throughout my life. It helps me to this day when we got political differences and all these different, controversies and divides that are going on. And I was telling somebody just this afternoon, I'm like, if you put yourself in that person's shoes and walked in their shoes and grew up with the beliefs that they grew up with, the household they grew up with, the news they watched, all these different things, might you be like them? And that's such a critical component, because then you can have that, like you said the word so many times, compassion. And that allowed me to sit there and see, wow, my mother really did the best that she could. And also I had to take responsibility that I had this expectation that she was going to be Mrs. Cunningham. She was going to be Mrs. Brady. And she never was, but she did raise the person that I became. And I went through those adverse experiences to become the man that I became. And I'm very proud of that. So I love that you brought that up. I want to grab some of these comments because people are chiming in here. But I'm having a great time with this, man. You are literally singing a lot of the stuff that I talk about. So I'm so glad that they're having this conversation. Tony Rodriguez, my brother, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, go follow Tony on Facebook. He just published a video yesterday that everybody's got to see. Tony and I have been great friends for quite some time. Tony says here, he goes, unfortunately, we're living in our feelings and emotions and making decisions based on our feelings than intellectual smart things to do. Absolutely. He goes on to say, with that said, we must connect our mind to our heart. And he says heat, but I'm sure he says heart. So it's exactly what you were saying, Sam. He also goes on to say, it's the longest journey most people will ever take, yet it's the most important of all, because when you can connect to your heart, you can live a happier, more fulfilled life. Amen, Tony. We are singing that here tonight. Tony's very verbose tonight. So he also says, sometimes living in the big cities and living high off the ground, we are less grounded, and we must make the extra effort to get grounded and connected to nature and to other people. Like you were just talking about. We were talking about that in my group coaching last night. We were talking about grounding mats and things of that nature, how important that is for us. We got Michael Baker in the house. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you. Michael Baker says here, he says, being present in the moment and open to the opportunities as they are there. 100%. So oftentimes we're in our head, or we're thinking like, well, this doesn't fit into my plan, I'm not going to do this. So thank you, Michael Baker, for being here. And feel free, guys, to chime in the conversation, ask any questions. Tony's back saying, got to say that it's more important to say no first and then to think about it than saying yes and overcommitting. Then you have less yeses for the things and the people that really matter. 100%. I am a former people pleaser and addict of that. So thank you, Tony, for saying that. Michael chimes in and says, yes, you have to Toro it to get over it. I'm not sure what that, I think that's another word, but yeah, appreciate that. Tony's back and says, with the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, we change. 1000%. We talk about leverage. We talk about hitting rock bottom. We talk about when we get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I love that. Tony also says we're just a grain of sand and at just one beach. 100%. Tony, you are chiming in, big boy. I appreciate you. Some people are too smart for their own good. 100%. And finally, he says here, nobody can give you what they don't have. So true. So true. So when we're talking about this conversation, I can't help but think about imposter syndrome. Have you ever dealt with that in your life, Sam?
Oh, of course. Of course. I think everybody does at one point or another.
How did you get through that? What would describe to us the experience of what you did and when you recognized it? That's I think that the most important aspect.
You know, I think it really was highlighted to me most recently. I'm a member of an organization called the Evolutionary Business Council, which is an organization of transformational thought leaders. And I joined many years ago and was able to join because they had certain requirements, a certain number of followers, mailing lists, so social media reach, and I was able to join because of the network. And I just remember being in like their events and seeing these people talk and like their experiences and the businesses they've built and what they've learned over time. And I just felt like, who am I to be with these people? Like these people are so much more successful than me and everything else. But then an interesting thing happened. A friend of mine ended up taking over the organization, asked me to help him run it. And we just had our annual retreat in San Diego and in April. And I was there on stage. And, presenters were coming and going, and one of the presenters were there, and I was helping to like kind of get the people in the audience to really feel what he was saying. Like he was talking about being in your body and stuff, but you could tell the way people were talking, they're very much in their head. Yeah. And so by helping to ask the questions and stuff, I was helping them to sort of drop in and really feel it. And when I came off, a number of people said to me, wow, that was really great, Sam. That was so good. You were really on top of it. It really helped. And then I realized that for me doing my own work and for me really like diving into my own issues, that I have a certain level of presence and being able to work with people, that I'm on par with those people who I felt like they were so far above me. And it's just funny. We all tend to judge ourselves by society standards because we live in society, and that's what we know, and that's what we expect. And yet when we really drop in and we're true to ourselves and we're in alignment and we're authentic, you know what? Those judgments, they're just not valid anymore.
Yes. It's so true. And I found in my life, I've experienced that imposter syndrome, but I found, you said the word, I believe congruent. It's one of my favorite words. I was when I first started public speaking, I was a suit and tie speaker. I wore the suit and tie, didn't wear the bandana and the hat. And I came off a big event and there was multiple speakers there. And I looked backstage and we were all wearing the same colored suit. We were all doing that little hand clasp. And I realized I felt like I don't belong here. I felt like I'm not on the same par with these people. And so that was the first time that I really decided, like, what would it be like if I just was myself instead of trying to be like everybody else, where I was trying to fit in. And I've done that my entire life. I never fit in anywhere. I was bullied at school. I was bullied on my way to school. I was bullied at my house. I grew up with zero self-confidence, zero voice. But in that moment, I just decided, and I remember my friend JB Glossinger saying to me, he goes, Chris, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to suck at it, I'm going to suck at it being me. And that's where I really realized that being an imposter is like not being true to your values and not being true to the gift that you're supposed to be, that we're all supposed to be here bringing and sharing. We're all unique in our own different ways. And then when I started getting in alignment and when I sat down and I did a values exercise with myself, I'm like, what do I value? I value honesty. Oh, how am I not being honest with myself? Oh, I'm pretending to be this polished, suit and tie speaker who doesn't swear and, says everything. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about inspiration today. And golly gee whiz. And once I started stepping into that space and owning it and saying, you know what, guess what? If I can't make everybody happy, or if my language offends somebody, not to take it personal, and not to be like, oh, I should be this person for that person and that person for that person, because prescriptively it worked for most of my life up until it didn't. And so I love the fact that we're tying this all in together, that the point of it is when you step into your brilliance, you step into your greatness, your vibration, your frequency raises. And when you do that, you start feeling that more self-satisfaction, you start that self-love, and that dovetails into the fact of how we talk to ourselves, and how we talk to ourselves brings alignment, brings the right people into our vibration that help support us, and all of it builds on one another. So with that said, what do you say for people who are afraid to be congruent, to be themselves? They're afraid of offending people. They're afraid of pissing off their wife, their boss, their coworker. What advice do you have for them to really step into their space and own it?
In my life, I've just seen that most people who feel that way, they're worried about what other people think about them.
100%.
And the truth is, they're too busy thinking what other people think about them to care what to think about you. It's a kind of actually a very egotistical, self-centered sort of point of view. Nobody cares.
Yep.
Nobody cares about you except you. And so when you care about you more than you care about what they think about you, which they're not even thinking about you, then you can really just live a better life. And think of the example that you're setting. Like, you have a son, right? People have children. It's what kind of example are we setting for future generations, for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren? Would you want your own child to act the way you act?
No. It's such a great point.
Yeah. And even if you don't have children, it doesn't matter. You just imagine yourself with a child. The same thing is still true. And in the end, it's like, you know what? Nobody else is walking in your shoes. Nobody else is paying your bills. You've earned the right to be exactly who you are.
It's so true. It's so true. And when you can look back on your life, where do you think that moment was? Talk to us about perhaps the lowest moment in your life, and what was the greatest gift that came out of that? Because I believe that when we do hit that rock bottom, like we talked about before, there's so many opportunities for us to become resourceful. There's so many opportunities for us to let go of things that are no longer serving us. What are some tips and advice that you could give to people who perhaps in that spot right now, they're feeling like, okay, Jesus Christ, if I keep doing the same stuff, I'm going to explode. I'm going to lose my mind. And a lot of people are stressed out right now. They're dealing with politics. They're dealing with the economy. They're dealing with, everything that's going on in the world. What are some tips that you could get people to be able to be inspired to walk away from this conversation feeling like, okay, I can do those things?
The first thing is we make a big deal over a lot of stuff that is not a big deal. And
like what?
Like who's right and who's wrong. We're always so concerned, I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
The thing that worries me most is I see this kind of attitude in a lot of people where it's like there's zero chance that you can convince them of something else. Like, they're so sure that they're right and they have the truth, they're not even willing to consider the possibility that something might be different than the way they think. And that's very dangerous.
That's huge right now.
Have a little bit of humility and come together. I mean, to me right now, the most important thing is for us to come together and not keep being so divided, because we have huge, huge challenges coming our way that if we don't come together, I don't know if we're going to make it. I hear different things from different people, but between the environment, between dictatorships around the world gaining more power, let's face it, we're the last major democracy that's really a world superpower. And if we don't honor the democratic practices that we have in this country, then you know what? We're going to fall into that dictatorship the same way everyone else is. It's not going to look the same. It'll look different, but it's like we've got to come together. We got to stop fighting and arguing with each other. And what really is going to make the difference? If your friend who you're arguing with because they voted for somebody else for president, if they were on their deathbed, would you really care who they voted for as president? I mean, my God, when I was a kid, you could argue with somebody and be on the opposite side of the fence, and it was okay. It was okay that people thought differently than you. And now it's like, you're not. Like this whole cancel culture thing. Well, again, there's good and bad in everything, but when stuff gets too extreme, it gets ridiculous and out of control and out of hand. To me, the guiding principle for me is always kindness and compassion.
Yep.
Like
golden rule.
Come first. Kindness and compassion. And if you want kindness and compassion, well, you know how you get it? By you giving it to everyone else.
Amen.
The more kindness and compassion we can have for other people, the more kindness and compassion we can have for ourselves, and vice versa. And outside of that, everything else is optional. Everything else is optional. If you've got a roof over your head, if you've got food to eat, if you've got clothes on your back, you're better off than like 90% of humanity in the world right now.
Amen, brother.
Be grateful for what you have. And look, I'm not saying like everything's great and perfect and to be Pollyanna about anything, but the more grateful we are for what we have, the more good stuff's going to come to us. And the more compassionate we can be to other people, the more people are going to be compassionate to us, the better the world we create. I mean, look, I'm on a mission to create a better world for a very selfish reason, as I want to live in a better world. I don't want to live in the world I grew up in with, like yourself, being bullied in the neighborhood by the neighborhood bullies and going through all the nonsense that I went through. I want a better world for me, and I'm happy to share it with other people. So let's all create a better world for everyone.
Oh, Sam, there's going to be so many sound bites out of this conversation tonight. You're literally speaking a lot of what I've been thinking. And the God's honest truth, when I was talking about Tony, who says here, the sounds of NYC, you could hear the fire trucks going off in the background.
Sorry about that.
Tony, that's what I said at the top of the hour. I said, check out Tony's video. Tony did a video yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And Tony and I have different opinions on certain things. We've had the opportunity to speak on stage together and spend time at an airport, having great conversations. But he did a video exactly like that. He goes, people are going to disagree, but we can't be name calling. We got to look, to seek first to understand. We have to be united, because united we stand, divided we fall. A lot of the same things are showing up in these conversations tonight. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because we all have a part to play. And at the end of the day, I tell people when I speak from stage, I'm like, take a look around the room. You got black, white, short, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, any label you want to put on it, but you split us all down the middle, and guess what? We all look the same. I donate blood every 8 weeks. I'm type A negative, so I know that my blood goes to people. I get an email or I get a text message about 8 days after I donate, usually saying that your blood was used in a local hospital. We're all more the same than we are different. And you're absolutely right. The media and the politics and everything are trying to divide us. Other countries are trying to divide us. It's been proven. But all together, we got to look around and say, hey, how can I help my brother and sister? How can I have that conversation? You're so absolutely right. It's great to disagree, but it's also great to sit there and say, let me understand where you're coming from, Sam. Let me help you. Let me understand where you're coming from, Tony. Ask questions. Don't just sit there and say you're wrong and I'm right, because what does that do? To your point, that puts us on the defensive. And what do? We get in that fight or flight. Oh, well, Sam's trying to make me wrong. So guess what? I'm going to point out all the things that are wrong about Sam, and we don't get anywhere. All we do is we perpetuate more anger and divisiveness, and we go back into our group think and we go, hey, you guys all think like I do. So, hey, let's go ahead and have this conversation because it makes me feel good. And the rest of those people, they're going to learn or they need to pay. And I love what you talk about, because that golden rule, that's how I live my life. People sit there and say, if you had to sum up your life, what would you say? And I'm like, do unto others that I would want done to me. If I was controversial, I would love for people to listen to me. I would love for people to sit there and say, what can I do to help you? I'm always constantly trying to make everybody's day a little bit brighter. Like you said, making this world a better place. I believe that our kids' generation are going to be that generation. But to your point, man, I'm so thankful that you brought this up. I can't even believe it, but we've already been talking for 50 minutes. I could talk to you for another couple of hours. I'd love to have you back here on the show. What you're saying is brilliant. I'm having such a good time with this. Where can people get a hold of you and to continue the conversation? I'm having a problem with my words tonight. Continue the conversation with you, man. And talk to us about your podcast as well.
Sure. So people can always find me, Sam at talkradio.nyc. Talkradio.nyc is the name of my radio station. I do my own show on it called the Conscious Consultant Hour. I do it like you do, live. I do it Thursdays, 12 noon Eastern time to 1 p.m. So like 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. And you can find us on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. Just look for Talk Radio NYC. It's the same handle everywhere. And I love, and I do the live streams. I pay attention to all the comments as well, and I answer people. So I always appreciate it. I love the fact that your audience has been chiming in as much as they have been.
Oh, we got a bunch more comments too. I got to grab here before we go off the air. But no, that's so true. And I'm going to definitely be, for one, subscribing to your podcast, because I love where your thought process is. I love the fact that you're at a place right now where you're like me. You're trying to make this world a better place. You're living congruently. You're living authentically. So I've just had such a great time with you, Sam. I appreciate you. I definitely want to have you back and talk about other things. But I'm going to put you backstage right now. I'm going to end out the show so we can try to make it under an hour. But don't go anywhere, because I still want to have a little chat with you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, brother. I appreciate you. Hang on one sec. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you came into the show halfway through, whatever it might be, go back and watch the beginning of this, because we set the tone at the very beginning of this conversation to make sure that you walked away with valuable tools to be able to implement in your life. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts tonight that, again, going back to the sticky note analogy, you should be writing some sticky notes tonight and putting those on your monitor. And the biggest one I want to start with is the fact of what Sam just said. There's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world. People are struggling. People don't have the tools that you perhaps are getting because you watch the show and you listen to the show and you've listened to it for some time. Be the change that you bitch about. Let's go out there and let's just make it a point every single day, rather than trying to validate your point, rather than trying to get your point across. Ask yourself, how can I see things from this person's perspective? What questions can I ask? And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, listen. We have selective hearing disorder. Oh, I wasn't paying attention because I was thinking about everything I was going to say. When people interrupt, ask them to please not interrupt, and to say, you know what, listen, I have not finished my thought yet. I would appreciate it if you actually listen to what I'm saying, as opposed to thinking about what you're going to say in return. Well, give me that opportunity. Give that person that opportunity. Like Sam said, be the example. Do unto others. Do you want people interrupting you? No. So stop interrupting people. And instead of sitting there saying, okay, well, now let me get my point across, say, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Where did you develop those ideas? Were your parents into that? Whatever it might be. And really dig into that, understand that person from their perspective. And then really the bonus is to be able to say back, so Sam, here's what I heard. I heard you say that the golden rule is most important. Sam, here's what I heard. And then when that person feels like they've been felt and heard, guess what they're going to do for you? They're not going to have any more ammunition. They're not going to have anything in their arsenal. They're going to sit there and say, you know what, this guy really cares about this conversation. This guy, is, even though we disagree, is trying to understand my point. Maybe I can put myself in a separate spot instead of defending myself or trying to prove myself right. And maybe I can sit there and say, you know what, let me listen to Chris for now for a few minutes. And maybe together we can walk away from this conversation and say, hey, listen, I don't believe or agree with your side, but guess what? I have a deeper understanding. So the next person I talk to, I can sit there and say, so what I'm hearing you say is this. And you can see things from other people's perspective, because so oftentimes now it's just we're finger pointing and we're trying to prove other people wrong and we're trying to change their beliefs about something. We're not going to do that. But the thing we can do is we can plant seeds. And as we plant seeds, I just had this happen recently. Somebody reached out to me. I talked to 3 years ago on a coaching call. They didn't hire me as their coach, but they came back to me and they said, Chris, now I understand what you were saying, because I was planting seeds. And guess what? If more people plant seeds and we water those seeds, it's going to grow, and it's going to grow beautiful fruit. And it's not for us. It's not for us. Our lives are going to be over like that. But when I stare into my son's eyes, or I look at the kids that I see sometimes at school, and I see their beautiful little faces, and I'm like, they deserve to grow up in a beautiful world that's safe. They deserve to grow up in a world where they still have free choices to be who they are and fly their freak flag, whatever that might be. Let's all be that change. Let's all be supportive of one another. And it starts with us. Love yourself first, ladies and gentlemen. When I ask people, like, who do you love the most? And they go, oh, my husband, my kids. You got to say yourself. And it's not being selfish. It's that self-love, because when you take care of yourself and you nurture yourself, and like we talked about with Sam, when we get congruent and we step into our greatness, right? And we stop pretending to be somebody we're not, and we get aligned with our values. And if our values are honesty and integrity, am I being honest with myself about this relationship? Am I being honest with myself about this job? Is there something different that perhaps I can do for myself? Pour into yourself. And I'll give you 5 things that you can do that are absolutely free. hydration, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and vitamin D. Right? Make sure you're getting half your body weight in ounces of water. So many people are dehydrated and they feel like shit, and they go to their short-term gratifications to ignore how they feel. And then they don't do anything with their lives, and they wind up bitter and depressed and frustrated. And guess what? They take that out on other people, and then they surround themselves with those other people, and they don't get anywhere in their life, and they wind up with regrets. You don't want to wind up with regrets, ladies and gentlemen. This is a beautiful life. There are so many special moments that are happening and you're not even aware of it. Enjoy those moments with your kids. Enjoy those moments with your wife. Think about it in terms of this. If this was their last day on this planet, if somehow they expired today or tomorrow, would I be happy with the actions and the thoughts and the things that I'm doing right now? I know for me, I wake up in the morning. The first thing I do is I say what I'm grateful for. The next thing I do is very important. I set my intention. My intention is to be present and playful with my son. If I'm sitting and playing with my son and I'm thinking about something else, I snap myself back into it. I'm like, Chris, he's only going to be 7 years old once. In 10 years, he's going to be 17 years old. And it's going to be a totally different game. Be present and playful. Use my words and my actions to make this world a better place. Every single day, somehow, some way, I use my voice and my words and my actions, whether it's a person or on video or on blogs or on podcasts, whatever it might be, to make this world a better place, and so on and so forth. Set the intentions for that. Don't set the intention to have a shitty day and then perpetuate and look for those things that oh, see, it's a shitty day. Change where you're thinking about yourself. Change the people you're surrounding yourself with. And I promise those results are going to change for you. Again, go back and listen to this podcast. Make sure you're following Sam because he's an excellent opportunity, an excellent resource. I want to grab some of these comments. We still have a few minutes. I always try to get out of here in under an hour. We got Angel and Angel Hewer in the house. Hey, Angel, thank you so much for being here. She says, absolutely. She's agreeing with the conversation. And by the way, join the Raw Unscripted Facebook group because Angel does a tremendous job. She's my co-administrator. She does a great job of posting inspirational and educational content every single day. Join the group. There's no charge for it. Go in there every single day. Get uplifted. Share an uplifting message. Share your challenges and your struggles, and people will pour into you and they'll help you. That's what the community is all about. So thank you, Angel, for being here. I appreciate you. Tony says also here, other people's opinions are none of your business. 1,000%. I can't tell you that when I let that stuff go, it was incredible for my health and for my relationships. I became a better person. I became a better husband. I became a better friend. I became a better everything when I stopped worrying about what other people thought of me. I'm who I am. And if you dig me, great. If you don't, then find somebody you do like. Don't spend your time being mad at me. It's not worth it. Tony says here, you've never had imposter syndrome, that means you've never pushed the envelope or tried new things. 1,000%. I try new things all the time. There's something I'm working on right now that I haven't announced that I've been doing for the last 9 months, which has really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And it's been a tremendous experience, growth wise and everything else. And it's making a difference in young people's lives, which matters to me greatly. Tony says here, when you graduate medical school, are you really a doctor, or is it when you're really practicing? Yes. Unfortunately, doctors do practice, and they need to practice better because some of the doctors are not so great. Angel says here, oh yes, great conversation, and boom, chakalaka laka boom. So here's my homework assignment for you guys. Take 3 things from this conversation. Please. This is episode number 266. We are booked through episode 291. We're booked into the end of November right now. When you think about that, 266 shows, if you take 3 things from every single show and you apply them, guess where your life is going to be in 6 months to a year? Guess where your life is going to be in a couple of years? It's going to be exponentially different, and it doesn't cost you a dime. What it costs you is time, focus, and energy. It costs you that hard work and that discipline to change where it is that you're at. And it's not going to be easy. I promise you it's not going to be easy, but guess what? It's going to be fucking worth it. I'm a living example. I went from being a 7th grade homeless dropout to earning my master's degree and buying a house when I was 30 years old the same year. And now I've got my independent business. I coach and I speak, and I'm publishing my book, and I'm speaking on stage, and I'm doing all these beautiful things, and I'm volunteering, and I'm mentoring kids, and I'm being a great dad. I'm being a great husband, and it's not perfect and it's not easy. But guess what? I wake up every single day excited because I know that each and every day that 1% rule is allowing me to become a greater and stronger and better person. So that ultimately when I do expire and I do transition, people will gather and say, wow, Chris made a difference in my life. Chris fought for what's right and what's fair. He risked for which that mattered. And he made this world a better place for who he was and what he did. So please be the example, lead yourself, and have an amazing life. If there's anything I can do, again, please reach out to me. And my intention is to make this world a better place. So let's stop the divisiveness, and let's start loving ourselves a little bit more and being a part of the solution rather than part of the problem. I love each and every one of you. I do that. I say that with the bottom of my heart because love is where it's at. When you love yourself and you love other people and you recognize that there are differences in the world, and that's a beautiful thing, That's what makes this world go round. So go out there and do your part. Let me know how that goes for you. I would love to hear. You can send me a message at christopher@christopherrausch.com. You can reach me on any social media. I would love to hear where you're at and what you're doing and what I can do to help. And together, what we can do is you can go out there and do something to help somebody else, and you can come back and tell me about it. All right? Deal? We'll be back here next week. Of course, Tuesday nights we're live 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And next week we have Angelic Mariner. Oh my God, you are going to love this person. You're going to love them. They were referred by my coach, and my coach, Sally Anderson, is an amazing soul. Yes, have a great night. Go out there and enjoy your families and your moments. I love you guys. We'll see you next time on the Raw Unscripted Show. Peace.